The year is 1861. In February, Jefferson Davis is appointed President of the Confederate States of America. In March, Abraham Lincoln is inaugurated as the 16th President of the United States of America. In April, Fort Sumter surrenders to the Confederates. In response to this, Abraham Lincoln calls up 75,000 volunteers to stop the rebellion. As a result of this, 4 more states secede from the Union and join the Confederacy. In response to this, Abraham Lincoln calls up an additional 43,000 volunteers to serve in the Army for 3 years. In late May, Richmond, Virginia becomes the capital of the Confederate States of America. In the North, under immense pressure to stop the Southern Rebellion, Abraham Lincoln orders Irvin McDowell to take action. Irvin McDowell decides the best course of action would be to march on Manassas Junction and engage the Confederate troops that are stationed there. Today is June 1st, 1861, and this is where our game begins. Hello and welcome everybody to My Own Worst Enemy, and as I said in the intro there, we are about to start a game of C.S.A, the American Civil War. This is by Ben Madison and Wes Ernie. And if you noticed on the first video that I posted on this game where I did the setup, Ben Madison himself left a comment there that apparently he is in talks with Compass Games about maybe bringing this back to publication. Maybe we'll see this under Compass Games at some point soon. So that's kind of a you heard it here first thing for C.S.A. Hopefully we will see that. I would love to see this updated with a little better components and maybe some rules tweaks and things, but we shall see. So in the last video we went through the setup of this game, so we have nothing left to do other than to jump right in. So this is, as I said, 1861. It is June, so this first turn will be June through July. So that's what we're looking at. That's where the game turn marker starts. And we are looking at what will be an alternative history of the Civil War. So we're in an alternate universe now, and this Civil War can go either way still, so we don't know what's going to happen. Should be exciting to see what happens and how this unfolds. So the first thing we are going to do is look at our sequence of play, and it tells us that we have the logistics phase. So this is where the C.S.A. and then followed by the U.S.A. will conduct their logistics operations. However, for turn number 1, that will not happen. So we do not perform logistics in turn number 1. So the next thing we do then is go down to 2.3, which is the first random events phase. Now this is the neat thing about this game. And this is, again, like I said in the introductory video, a Ben Madison, Wes Ernie design, where you will pull a random chit and it will tell us which of these events to fire off here. And to do that, we have our, I'm going to get the cup out so we can use it. So there are 8 of these event chits, and I will show you one of those. So there's 8 of these event chits, numbered 1 through 8. And for the first turn, we will put 1 through 6 into the cup. And then following the next years, it's 1862 through 1865 or 1864 in this case, if we get there, you'll add 8 of these. So, but for this first turn, I'm going to grab 1 through 6. So let's do that. And that leaves 7 and 8 over to the side here. They will not come in. These go into the random chit pull cup. Based on what we draw is what page of events we will do first. So let's do that. Give it a good shake. And I will reach in here and randomly grab, well, if I can find one, we'll randomly grab one. And it is event 4, event number 4. Now this will stay out of the cup. We will end up pulling all 6 of these at some point. I believe that's how it works. So I'm going to put event number 4 off to the side. And that means to go to your event book and look at 1861 chit number 4. And of course we will do what it says here in order. And it doesn't look like much is happening here, so we'll give you a quick look at that. So basically the first thing there says USA Pope and C.S.A. Van Dorn. And what that will mean is Pope and Van Dorn will become available to the U.S. and the Confederate States. They're available general boxes on the this chart up here. So let's grab those. Let's look for Pope first. So he should be in my counter mix here, which I will grab and take a look for. And I am looking for two markers here. I have to find the actual Pope marker that goes on the map, and then his corresponding Brigade Max marker, which we'll put off to the side over here. So that's what I'm looking for right now. All right, there is the Pope available marker. So that's going to go into the available generals for the US. And here is the Brigade Max marker. So that's going to start off at 0 over here for the US because he has no one assigned to him yet. So we'll just put that there. And then I will look for the Buell markers now. Not Buell. Wait, who am I looking for here? I closed my book. We're going to put this out so I can see who we're actually pulling for. That was Pope. We're looking for Van Dorn now. So let's see here. All right, and with the Confederate markers, there aren't quite as many of those. We have the Van Dorn map marker goes into the available box for the Confederates, and of course that Brigade Max marker will go into the 0 box for his assigned brigades. Next on the list, it says Seward prevails. If this is the very first chip drawn in the game, the pugnacious U.S. Secretary of State breaks diplomatic relations with Britain. Roll twice for British entry. So this is, our British entry marker is here. Remember, that's got to get to 20. So this is bad news for British entry on the Confederate side. So I'm looking for a, let's just grab a blue. Well, I can grab one of these red D6s here. I'm going to grab 2 of these D6s for the Confederates. And we will roll them. And what we're doing here is we're going to roll, in this case, twice. So this will move that entry marker to the right towards the number 20. And let's see what we get. That looks like, and I can't see because my camera, right? Oh, that looks like a 6 and a 2. So that is 8. So I'm assuming I'm doing this right, but that's going to move the British entry marker up to 8. The British are not happy at all right now. Remember, this is an alternate history civil war, and also that marker can move the other direction too, so keep that in mind. Next on the list, threatened executions. So threatened executions, C.S.A. uses strong-arm tactics against rebel privateers on the high seas. Roll for British entry. Well, now this is really getting interesting fast. So let's see what happens here with this die roll. That looks like a 2, so that's going to bump this up 2 more to 10. So we're already halfway to the British intervening, so that's good news for the Confederates, not so much good news for the U.S. All right, next on the random event chart. Lincoln urges seizure of Haitian land to colonize ex-slaves. Roll for French entry. Well, this really is bad news for the Union. So we're going to roll again, this time though for French entry. So we'll roll, and there's already a die in there, but this looks like it came up 6. So that's going to move the French entry marker up to 6. If I can straighten that out there. And I will point out also, these markers are moving fairly quick, at least in my opinion. I don't have the experience to know if this is normal or not. Again, random events could sway that anyway. One thing that Ben and Wes tell you in the rule book is if you don't like the foreign entry rules for the European powers, you don't have to use them. So it's an optional rule, really. If you don't feel like you want intervention, you don't have to have it. I think it's kind of cool, so we're leaving it in and seeing what we get. All right, back to the random events. There is a little flame next to Missouri, and the rule book tells you what those little markers are in the random events section of the rule book. So let's take a look at what that means. If I can find that little flame, I think that's a flame. Well, it looks like that's what it looks like. Or maybe it's a spade that's a white spade. So it says, in a Confederate minor raid event, USA must remove 1 brigade in any state named. Okay, so that's over in Missouri. And there's, well, no one's in Missouri because it's neutral. So I'm not really sure what we would do there. Let me check real quick in the C.S.A. Game errata information that I pulled from ComSimWorld and see if it mentions this. All right, so I'm not seeing that clarification in the ComSimWorld's errata sheet that I found. And so since, like I said, there's no, this is Missouri, it's neutral right now, so there's not any Union troops in there. And again, I'm going to remind you, check the comment section below this video. It's possible that maybe Ben's going to watch this again and he can clarify what to do if this case comes. And also I looked, that is a spade. It's white, so it's a minor raid. There's also, if this were black, it would be a major raid. So in this case though, nothing's going to happen. So we're going to move right along and we get to Indian atrocities in Texas force Texas to withhold troops from the Confederate Army. Transfer 2 C.S.A. brigades from the map to reserves immediately. Well, this is going to hurt the Confederates on these opening turns here. So let's see what we want to remove. And it is, oh, that's the Union. So the Confederates have, who is this? This is, Beauregard has 6 brigades. Beauregard is over here, and which isn't good news because Beauregard will be attacked this first turn. This is Price, who has 4. And all these other ones have 1. So I'm going to take it from Price. I'm going to move Price's, his brigades down to 2. Now they don't have to both come from Price. I could pick another one of the generals and lower it. I'm gonna take them both off of Price though. So we're gonna go from 4 to 2 with Price. And the next event is a C.S.A. 1st Tennessee Volunteer Infantry Brigade and U.S.A. Irish Brigade. So we're gonna take a look at what the little stars mean. And again, this is a learning game as well, so that's why we're doing it slowly and going through the rule book. Any event preceded by this circle star is a deployment event. This will add various veteran cavalry or Grand Army units. All units that go into that side's available veterans box, which is up here. At least that's where I'm going to put it, except for the Grand Army counters, which those come out different ways. So in this case, it's telling us that the C.S.A. 1st Tennessee Volunteer and the U.S. Irish Brigades are coming out. So let me find those. We'll look for let's look for the C.S.A. Tennessee Volunteer Infantry Brigade first. All right, not too hard to find because they are marked with a little black VET in the upper right-hand corner. Let's see if I can show you that without dropping it. So that is the veteran unit that's coming out, the 1st Tennessee. We will put it in the available brigades box, which is, where is that? I thought it was here. I think it is here. I've already got those. So it says disabled veterans, but we're just going to put those in there for now. And then the U.S. Irish Brigade also comes out. All right, that's a little harder to find because the VET is in a light goldish color there. Let's see if you can see that. That's the Irish Brigade. So it's going to go over here in available volunteers. Or I guess you know what it is. They all should be in the available side is what it is. So you have available here, disabled here. So that's where they need to be. And then finally we have 3 things. We have U.S.A. Balloon Corps. Now this has a circle by it. And a circle tells us that any event accompanied by the big dot, it calls it, is a special event. When an event is called for, place a penny, or a red disc in our case, in the corresponding event box, and of course that will give us the ability to use that event. I'm going to grab the discs that I had set aside just for this purpose. And again, red for the Confederates and then blue for the Union. So first is the Union, the Balloon Corps. So I'm going to find that, and that's up here. I'll put that down, and it says that we can use aerial observation for the first time in history. Play coin at any time. C.S.A. must reveal the contents of any one stack adjacent to U.S. forces. So this one, this being a solitaire run through, is not as important to the Union or even the Confederates here. So not a huge deal at this point. I've also got to remember those things are over here so I can start, I got to remember to use them. So the U.S. also gets military telegraph service, which orders are transmitted at speed of electricity. If any USA stack fails its initiative roll, play this chit and immediately re-roll for initiative. So that's useful. Finally, we have a C.S.A. Yankee Papers. And this says that Union deployments revealed by inquisitive Northern press. Play coin at any time, U.S. must reveal. So this is the opposite of the Balloon Corps for the C.S.A. So they would be able to reveal what the contents of a stack next to them are, adjacent it says. Now, I may come up with something between videos before we use these things to give a little bit of an added edge to either side so that we can account for that in our solitaire play. All right, and that is it for event sheet number 4. And then we go back to the sequence of play. And I love these random events. It really makes every game different. Replayability is through the roof when they do this. Now we go into the naval phase. Now again, this is where if you had another player, he would secretly write down where his fleet's going, and then the Confederate player would write down where his fleets are going, and you would reveal. But in this case, there was a user that, I think his name was Jeremy, and he posted this solitaire random placement sheet for naval. And basically what happens is the Confederates will place on this map where they want their ships to go, and then we'll roll randomly for the Union to see where they place them. And I'm going to zoom in here so we can look at that naval warfare map a little easier. Okay, and so now you can see a lot better what's going to happen here. This is a Confederate ship, and this is, let me see if I can read who this is. It is the C.S.A. Moroccan pirates. So I guess these are pirates that are aiding the Confederates, and this is the USS, what is it, San Jacinto? Probably just murdered that name, but that's okay. So I do know the Moroccan pirates are limited to the Atlantic. That was one thing that was in the errata. So for the Confederates, I'm going to place, and of course, that would mean anywhere of these 3 choices. I'm just going to put them in the North Atlantic. Actually, no, I'm going to put them in the Central Atlantic. So that would raise the inflation by 3 if no Union ships are assigned to that. And now I'm going to go to that solitaire chart that I had, and we are going to roll for where the Union places its ships this turn. I'll zoom back out here now to the, well, it's going to zoom back out, but there's no need to do that. I'm just going to roll a D6 here on this naval warfare map, see what we get, and we will see where the Union places its ship. So it's a 6, and if I look at the chart, it goes to the South Atlantic. So unfortunately for the Union, that's not where the Confederate ship went. What that means is there's no battle, so I'm just going to take the D6 off there again. No battle, but since these pirates were in the Central Atlantic and were not stopped, inflation for the USA increases by 3. So, and let's put these ships back up. Well, actually, I'm just going to leave them here for now. I don't know if any kind of future event may change that or something, so we'll leave them where they're at for now. And let's go back out now to the large overview map. Okay, and so now that we're here, you can see our inflation marker is currently at 0, or $1 in this case. So we're going to move that forward by 3. So 1, 2, 3. U.S. inflation is now at $1.32. Not super news, not super good news for the Union there. You don't want your inflation to get up to 70 because then it's a game over. And I got a feeling we're going to see the inflation markers move quite a bit in this game. All right, so that was naval phase, and now we're going to go to the pulse phase, and this is where we start moving our units on the map, taking turns, and seeing what happens here. But first, this is the only point in the game where you're really kind of railroaded into this first battle. So if you look at the rule book, it says special early turn rules. On the first pulse of the first turn, USA must attack C.S.A. forces in hex 1520. Now that's Beauregard, I believe. Let's see. It is. And so this is that Battle of Manassas that we had talked about in the intro. So unless Baltimore is C.S.A. flagged, well, it's not. No C.S.A. unit may enter, and this is in addition to this, but no C.S.A. unit may enter Maryland or D.C. before 1862. Hex 1521 contains U.S. forces. Basically what we're looking at here is just our first move is kind of dictated. So let's zoom back in again, and we will get to sample our first combat. We have McDowell, who is moving into hex 1520 as we were told to do. Let's just put him, we'll put him right above there, like that. And Lincoln stays in the White House. He's got his own problems with Mary Todd, so he's back in the White House. He's not going to go fighting. Combat. Let's go to combat because we need to resolve that before we continue our pulses here. And I'm getting ahead of myself here. I forgot about initiative, so let's do that real quick. So McDowell actually has not moved yet into that hex. So he has to roll for initiative. He doesn't get initiative. He's not going to move. So in this case, McDowell's initiative is 3. It's that last number on the counter. So he's going to have to roll 3 or less to even be able to move. So I'm just going to roll here on the board. And that is it's off the board there, but it's a 2. So he does pass his initiative, so he will move after all. And I'm taking Lincoln, but like I said, Lincoln's got to stay in the White House. So now that we have rolled for our initiative and have actually moved McDowell, we're going to go into the battle phase. So I'm going to pull out the battle procedures here. So the first thing we're going to do is come up with McDowell's numbers. So McDowell is 443, so his current brigade max is at 7. So he has 7 brigades. So what that means is, and I'm going to write this down so that I can track it, but what that means is McDowell is at, see, what did I say McDowell was? 4, so it's 28. 7 times 4, so it's 28, 28. And then that last number I need to double check, that's initiative for McDowell, so that's not going to get added into this, so it's simply going to be 7 times 3, which is the default number on the brigades. Remember, brigades are 1, 1, 3. So that's going to be the numbers for McDowell, and now we look at Beauregard, who is he's at 6. His brigade max is at 6. I need to see his numbers here. We got McDowell in the way, so let me move him out of the way a little bit. So he's at, it's hard to read these counters. This is one thing I hope they fix if they do republish this game. The Confederate counters are really hard to read. Part of that is the lighting in here, but it's also, they're just hard to read. So it's 554 for Beauregard. So his numbers are 30, 30, 18. So again, for McDowell, the offensive rating's 28, defensive is 28, and fortitude is 21. For Beauregard, the offensive rating is 30, defensive rating is 30, and the fortitude is 18. So the fortitude's going to be kind of like the amount of hits that the brigades can take. And for every 3 you hit, of course, you will lose a brigade. In this case, McDowell is the attacker at 28 and Beauregard's defending at 30. And also of note, there's no cavalry to withdraw or anything like that. So the next thing we need to do, this is where each player would secretly write down how many dice they intend to chuck. And then you would roll and reveal everything. So no need to do that here. I'm just going to pick a number. In this case, McDowell is attacking with an offensive rating of 28. So you want to roll as high as you can without going over. Ideally, you want to roll a 28. You would not want to roll anything higher than that because then there's no effect. With a rating of 28, and this is the number of dice you want to pick to roll. So if I were to roll 4d6s, the highest I could get is a 24. So I'm guaranteed I'm guaranteed to get a hit. Or I could roll 5d6s, which would potentially give me the chance to roll over 28. So not much of a chance though. So I guess what I'd want to do is decide, do I want to roll 4 or do I want to roll 5? Take a chance and try to really get the higher numbers and get Beauregard out of there. I'm going to roll, grabbing my dice here, I'm going to roll 5 dice for McDowell. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to pull those out. So for Beauregard with his his defensive rating of 30, he's going to want to roll 5 dice too, because he can't possibly go over 30 by rolling 5 dice. So I'm going to choose to grab 5 dice for Beauregard here. And so what we will do, and I could choose to roll 6 dice or even more for Beauregard if I really wanted to take the risk. But I'm not going to do that yet. So here we go first. The Union's firing with 5d6. And I'm going to, let's see if I can bring dice tray in so we can all see the roll. Because I hate it when you can't see the roll. And this dice tray is flat, so maybe we can just do it like this. I think that'll work. All right, so I'm going to roll 5 now for the Union. And so that's 12 I see right off. And that's 15, 18. So I'm gonna write that down because like I said, I had some dice that I was gonna use for tracking hits. So it's gonna be 18 hits for McDowell. Beauregard now rolls his 5 dice. Doesn't like it's as good for him, so that is 5, 11 total. So he rolls 11. And again, I'm just gonna write this down. All right. Get the dice tray out of the way without messing up the board. Put that back at the top there, which you'll see in a second. And another thing I should mention while we're doing this didn't apply here, but the hex that they're in can also provide bonuses to the attacker and the defender. This is just a green hex, which if we look at the terrain effects chart is just an open hex. It's farmland, no effect. So it's something to keep in mind as we go along. But like I said, in this case, it's not going to matter. So McDowell inflicted 18 hits. So that's going to be 6 brigades worth of units on Beauregard. So Beauregard, and we'll move those down. I'm going to just mark them, but I'll move those down when we go back to the big overview so you can see that, how that works. So I'll just put a D6 next to Beauregard. He lost 6, and then his return fire, Beauregard inflicted 11 hits on McDowell. So anything above, fractions are just chopped off in this case. So that's only 3 hits on McDowell. So McDowell's going to suffer, and again, I'll put a D6 on McDowell. He's only going to suffer 3 losses of brigades. We'll put that on there. So the winner of the battle here is going to be McDowell because he inflicted more hits. And of course, Beauregard has lost all of his brigades. This is going to be a defeat for the C.S.A. and Beauregard is going to have to retreat. And so he's going to have to retreat into a friendly controlled hex. So let's take a look here real quick. He can go south or he can go back here towards, looks like that is Jackson. It's hard to see. I'm going to move, or actually, he could also go into this brown hex, I believe. That's just rough terrain. Yeah, that's just rough terrain. But I'm going to move him back. We're going to move him to on top of Stewart there. So that'll be his retreat. If he survives, he's going to retreat, that is. So let's go ahead and conduct the retreat, because that's what you do first. Now we're going to have to check for leader deaths. In this case, I'm going to grab this D6. So we'll start first with McDowell. So for the USA, we're going to roll 2 D6s, and on a 12, McDowell will die. So let's do that real quick. The only thing that's going to kill McDowell here would be 2 6s. So let's go ahead and see what happens to McDowell. Does he live or die? He survives. Maybe he was wounded with that 1 6. Now, Beauregard it's a little different. On Snake Eyes or 2 6s, the Confederate generals are killed. So let's roll, see if Beauregard survives. He does. We'll get the dice tower out of the way. All right, so we've done our retreats. We've checked for leader deaths. Just looking at the book here real quick. Don't think we're missing anything. So I can take us back out now to the overview, the big overview map. All right, so back to the big overview. And remember that Beauregard had 6 brigades worth of damage inflicted on him. So that's going to get rid of all his brigades. And that's going to take him back down to 0, which reminds me that this was actually a rout. So a rout would cause the loser to actually retreat 2 spaces. Even though the general survived, it's still a rout. So we're going to have to move Beauregard 1 more. We only moved him 1. So he's actually going to go all the way back to Richmond. And the Union player could choose to, since this was a rout, could choose to actually pursue, but that's not going to be the case here. They wouldn't do it anyway. McDowell, as you can see, had 3 hits inflicted on him. He was at 7, so that's going to take him down to 4. So he has 4 brigades with him now. And a little ahistorical here, sort of the opposite of what we saw in real life. But in this universe, McDowell caused the Confederates to run all the way back to Richmond. So just the opposite. So already we're off the rails, as they say, even though we were kind of railroaded into taking that first battle, which I think was the right decision on the designer's part. And so that's it. That's our first action. So I'm going to also put, so we will try one of these markers. Let's see if that's any better. That's a lot better. I can still see that it's McDowell, and I can read those numbers through the these little discs that I have. All right. So that's our first battle. You got to see combat right off there, so that's good. So that was the first pulse for the game, and I forgot to mention too, and I knew this, but I didn't mention it. The turn record track tells you who has the initiative. So for these first 3 turns, the U.S. goes first, which is why I had McDowell move like that. So just that's something to remember, that your initiative is actually on the turn record track. You do not roll for that. So that's it for the first pulse for the Union, and now we go to the Confederate side and see what the Confederates want to do here. And looking, we have Jackson sitting here with, I think he has 1 brigade. He's in rough terrain though. And underneath him is Johnston, I think that says. And Johnston, so Johnston and Jackson, they each have one, so I don't think I want to move them just yet. We'll come back to that. We have Price over here. I believe that's Sterling Price, who, if you've watched True Grit, the original True Grit, you got to see John Wayne's cat was named General Sterling Price. A little trivia note there for you. So Price, we gave up 2 of our brigades, if you'll remember. He's only got 2 brigades now. And the red border, you'll recall, means that that's the state border. The black borders are the ones that you can't cross. This is Missouri, so, I mean, we could march into Springfield and start taking Missouri. I don't think I want to do that yet. I am just going to march Price. Now, because I'm not starting adjacent to an enemy force, I can move up to, I believe it is 3 hexes. Yes. Otherwise, it would be no more than 2. I'm looking. I don't think I incur any penalty if I move him across the border. And I think the other thing about Missouri, let's look this up. I think Missouri, I think I probably could take Springfield without any consequences. Like if Kentucky's the one you got to watch out for, because it will flip everything to your enemy if you invade Kentucky first. I think for Missouri, it's just a free-for-all though. And I'm looking up the special rules. And I love this rule book. I'll say again, it's spiral bound, so flipping through this thing is awesome. I would love to see publishers do this. I know it probably costs more money, but it's just so much easier to flip through the rule book without destroying it. All right, so Missouri. Missouri begins the game neutral. It can be invaded by both players. When one player first has his own flag markers on all 4 of the cities simultaneously, then it becomes part of that player's home country. All hexes in the state, except those with enemy flag markers on them, become friendly to him. Reduce the player's inflation by 12 boxes. You know, so it may be worth waiting in this case for your inflation to go up, and then maybe take this as because reducing your inflation by 12 is huge. So I'm not so sure. And again, I don't think there's any penalty for moving Price into Missouri. So I think what I'm going to do is just that. I'm going to move Price into Missouri. I'm not going to go into Springfield just yet, because like I said, Price only has 2 brigades now. We have the logistics phase coming up. Maybe we can get him some more forces. Maybe I'm being too cautious, but this is an alternate universe, so who knows? So let's mark him as being moved, and that will end the C.S.A.'s pulse. And we will go back to the Union. Now, I don't think there's a whole lot. Let's see, for the Union, let's start with Butler. So Butler, I believe he attacked, if I remember, and I'm not going to say I do because my memory is shot as I get older, but I think Butler in our universe, in our Civil War, actually attacked Magruder and lost. Butler currently has 1 brigade, and Magruder looks like he also has 1 brigade. So I'm just going to start with Butler, and we're gonna pass on Butler as well. So we're going to go kind of off into an alternate history now, where he's deciding not to attack Magruder right away if that's what really happened. And then we go back to the Confederates now. It's their pulse. And let's just go to this. Polk is down here. And so I think Polk historically, and the history here, it's like a history test I'm taking all of this in, but I think he's the one that went into Kentucky. I think he's the one that caused Kentucky to flip, which probably isn't a very smart thing for us to do here. But Kentucky is way up here, and again, I could be wrong about that. That seems to be what I remember. I think that what I do want to do is move Polk forward. So he's not starting adjacent to an enemy. I could go 1, 2, 3, and I may do that. So this fort is actually in Kentucky, and per the rules, you can take this fort without flipping Kentucky. That's the only hex in Kentucky that you can fight over without losing the state either way. And then this other fort is in Tennessee. Yeah, I'm going to move Polk towards Kentucky. 1, 2, 3. And let's grab another one of these discs. We'll put that out to show that Polk has moved. And now it's back to the Union's pulse. Back to the Union. Let's go back up to Fremont up there and Lyon. And I think, did Lyon tangle with Price? And Fremont, I think, kind of just defended up here. At least that's what I'm inclined to have both of these units do, honestly. We still have Price sitting down here. And maybe we should just march into Missouri with both of those units. Let's see what they're guarding there. Lyon is in a river hex, and so is Fremont. There's nothing there. And let's look at how many brigades they have. Lyon has 1, Fremont has 2, so Fremont certainly has more. So he has as many as Price had. And we can stack these units together. So I could move, and again, we could also think about going into St. Louis there. I don't know if we want to do that or not. And my intent here is not to follow history either, so we will slowly derail this train. So let's see. And again, like I said, they can march into Missouri without causing any flippage. I'm pretty sure that's what we just read. Can be invaded by both players, and strictly a case of you're looking to take over the 4 cities in Missouri to flip. And those 4 cities are St. Louis, Jefferson City, Springfield, and St. Joseph. I don't know. So Fremont, I'm going to be a little cautious here. He's going to go, and I think, and you know what? I think I forgot to roll for initiative for both of these units. So hold on here, hang on a second. All right, so a huge important part of the Civil War, these generals just didn't automatically move. So Price, we moved him from here. So his initiative is 4. Let's see if he actually could have moved. Maybe that he couldn't. So he's got to get a 4 or less to move. So he doesn't. So see, aha. So Price does not move that way. He actually has to sit right where he was. He failed his initiative roll. Who was the other guy? Polk, we moved. Polk, I believe, started in Memphis. He did, so he may be staying there. His initiative is only a 2, so let's put him back in Memphis and roll for his initiative. Did I take that dice out? All right, I did. So he rolls, well, he failed his initiative roll, so he's not moving. All right, and so Fremont is a 4, so let's go ahead and see if he can even move. It's a 5, so Fremont can't move. So let's give him a used marker. And Lyon is a 5, so odds are he can move if he wants to. And he does, so he passes his initiative roll. Now we want to move Lyon. He was the one that had 1 brigade. I think I'm going to move him to Cairo. So he can do that. And we will show him as being moved. And actually, I can't do that either, so let's back that up. Because we just rolled for initiative on Fremont and he failed. So actually it goes back now to the Confederates. So let's go to Bragg, and we will see what we want to do with Bragg. And we want to probably move him up towards this fort. Bragg has only 1 brigade, and we can move him 1, 2, 3. We could 1, 2. Could actually get into this fort. If he passes his initiative, let's roll for his initiative. He's got to get a 4 or less. He does, so he can move. And he's going to go 1, 2, 3, which will put him in that fort. All right, now we go back to the Union, and now we go to Lyon, and he's going to have to make his initiative roll. So we'll do that. He's got to get a, what did we say? 5 or less. He gets a 6, so he's not moving. So Lincoln's got to be getting really frustrated now that his generals aren't moving. But then again, we're just starting and they don't have a lot of brigades, so not a lot they can do anyway. Back to the Confederates, and we're looking at, that's Nashville. And that is A.S. Johnston in Nashville. And he died at Shiloh. But he may not die here because this is an alternate universe Civil War, so we'll see. I'm going to pass on Johnston. So I'm just going to leave him right where he's at. And back to the Union, we have Rosecrans up there. And maybe we just want to march Rosecrans. Well, we don't want to go into Kentucky. Maybe we just want to march him down towards Virginia. And remember, you have to be able to trace line of supply back to 2 sources. In this case, that would be a city. We're not in trouble of violating that supply rule yet, but it's something we'll have to keep track of, memory of once the board starts changing. For now, we're okay. So I'm going to move Rosecrans to Charleston. Well, I'm not going to move. Remember, got to roll initiative. So 3 or less. So he can do that. He can move 2. 1, 2. We will mark him as moved. We go back to the Confederates, and we have these 2 generals stacked. And I think we're going to leave those there. So I'm just going to pass on them. We will pass there. Back to the Union. We're not going to move Lincoln. Back to the Confederates. That is Jeb Stuart there. Probably want to move Jeb Stuart. Now he is starting next to a enemy force, so he could, I think this same rule applies to our cavalry, that they can only move 2 instead of 3. So that being the case, I'm going to move Stuart 1, 2. We can move him into here. Let's see. 1, 2. I'm just going to move him into here for now. It's going to kind of pull back. We'll figure out what to do eventually when we get more units on the board. All right, so I'm going to say that's it for the pulse phase. I don't see anybody else we can move. Well, like I said, Lincoln and Davis, they're not moving. They're going to stay in their capital buildings. So that will take us now to the reinforcements phase. In the reinforcements phase, all units on the map which are flipped, or in our case have an orange disc on them, are now unflipped and basically return active duty. So let's remove all these little orange discs. All right, so we get all those little moved discs off, and then it says that the Confederates and the U.S. simultaneously receive reinforcements and possibly paroles. Now, they're not going to receive paroles here because it's too early for that, but they will receive reinforcements. And the way that's going to work, we'll start with the Union first. You're looking at your current inflation level. So for the U.S., inflation sits at $1.32. The reinforcement number is 16 there, so they will receive 16 brigades. All right, the U.S. reserves are currently at 14, and the inflation marker sits at $1.32, so they're going to get 16 more. That's going to put the USA reserves up to 30, and 30 is here. Now the Confederates, their reserves sit at, let's see, what is that? There's the reserves. They're sitting at 12, and their inflation marker is still at 0. So they're going to get an additional 13, so that's going to take them to 25. So the C.S.A. reserves go to 25, which is here. There's no chance of a draft yet, so just for learning purposes, it says once per calendar year during spring turns only, each player may declare a draft when he takes reinforcements. Double the number of reinforcements received, then roll a die and increase the side's inflation by the number rolled. So you can draft, but it's painful is what they're telling you there. And then paroles, like I said, we're not going to have paroles, so that's going to end our reinforcement phase. And now we go to the second random events phase. And again, it's draw 1 chit, and it's telling us to put all chits back into the cup for use during the next year only, but we're not there yet. So let's draw another random event chit. Now we'll get that D6 out of the way. So again, random events. And the chit that comes out is chit number 6. So that does not go back into the cup. We'll put chit number 6 right there. I will go back to find our random events book. 1861. Chit number 1. Too bad this wasn't spiral bound because it's a little hard to get it to lay flat. All right, so the C.S.A. gets Hill, so let me find Hill's 2 counters. All right, we have Hill, so we take his leader counter and put it into the available generals. And that is not the available generals, this is the available generals. And of course his brigade max is currently at 0. So that goes to the 0 box. And for the U.S., we've got to find Porter and do the same thing. All right, so we have Porter now. We put the Porter's marker goes on the board. Not the board, but it goes on the available generals over here. And his brigade max is at 0. We'll put that on the 0 mark. All right, the second thing, USA Grant. Before deploying Grant, roll 2 dice. On a roll of 7, remove Grant from the game permanently. Ouch. His critics succeed in spreading rumors of his drinking. Okay. All right. Mr. Madison and Mr. Ernie have a sense of humor. Before I even roll Grant, or even find him in the box, let's just roll. And we'll roll 2 Union dice. So let's see. So if this comes up 7, we're not going to see Grant in this Civil War. That's going to suck. We rolled a 6, so we are going to see Grant. So let's grab General Grant out of the box. All right, I'm glad that those rumors were put to rest and we have Grant in the game. So Grant now goes into the available generals, which is good news for us. And then the brigade max, of course, goes to 0. And then our next event says USS Kearsarge. That is a new symbol for us, so let's take a look at what that means. So the symbol looks like 4 little diamonds. It says the designated ship is ready for naval warfare. So this is good news for the Union, and I will grab that ship because it's going to go out onto the naval warfare map for us. All right, so we'll put the counters back, and we will put our counter marker at the top of the naval warfare map. All right, next event is Bad Harvest. U.S. grain saves France from starvation. See, now we're rolling to reduce the French entry. And I believe it's just 1 die, so let's grab that. And we are rolling now to see how far we can reduce that French entry marker. I wished it were British instead. 2, so we can bring the entry marker for France down to 4. All right. And we have another Missouri. So this still is not going to come into play because we have no units in Missouri, so I'm going to skip that. Artillery. If using rule 18.16, which we are, place a coin in the U.S. Army Artillery box, card 5. I believe that's this. So let me grab another of these red plastic tokens. So that's going to give the U.S., and we are using this artillery supremacy rule, so it's going to add +10 to the firepower for the U.S. in battles. And I'll show you how that works when we get there, but it's basically just that. You're going to add 10 to the, up to 10 to the firepower for your units. We will not go over the number of brigades, so that's why it's up to 10. All right, so that is the artillery. Our next thing is Beauregard prevails. We are not using rule 18.11, so we just dismissed that. And so the next thing is more veteran units coming out. So we have the C.S.A. 1st Missouri Brigade. Grab the C.S.A. box and find the C.S.A. 1st Missouri. So that's going to go into our available veterans. I'll put that up there. Oops, without flipping them. Who else? The U.S. Delaware Indian Scouts deploy on any USA-controlled hex in Kansas. Let me see if I can find that unit. All right, and this is telling us that the Delaware Scouts are an Indian unit, and the event card or the event page tells us to deploy on any U.S.-controlled hex in Kansas. We'll just put them in, I'll just put them kind of in the middle for now, I guess. We'll just put those out there as directed. Now, the next thing on this is U.S. Lincoln's War Orders. All right, so let me grab a disc here. This is going to give us a token for our special events card. And let's see, Lincoln's, if I can find it on the, Lincoln's War Orders is basically going to give us the ability to move a stack without rolling for initiative, so that's kind of cool. And as a reminder, and this is something else I forgot to. I believe that the units I rolled for in these river hexes did not need to roll for initiative. If the Union troops are in a river hex, you don't roll for initiative. So my mistake, I think both of those units could have moved. So this, again, a learning game as well, but maybe we'll go back and correct that in just a second then. Let's finish here though. So the C.S.A. Committee on the Conduct of War, so that's their card. And this says, play as soon as both sides are committed to a battle. Federal bureaucrats interfere, do not count USA general firepower in a battle. So that's kind of good for the Confederates. We will put that out. Get a lot of these little tokens on these cards. We'll have to keep in mind that we can play those. And that is it for chit number 6. And we go back to the sequence of play, and it says this concludes one full turn. Move the turn marker to the next turn record on the track. So that's turn 2. That's going to be here when we come back. And we're already at an hour, which is why I'm going to stop it here. But before we do, like I said, these, and I'm going to double check this, because I don't think we were required to roll for initiative there. So looking for the River Valley on, yeah, so it says USA firepower doubled. That's attack and defense, and the USA automatic initiative 6.1, which I think that tells us that in fact they could move. So let's grab the rule book just to verify. Generals do not roll for initiative. So it's generals only, it says. If they begin a pulse on a river hex, they can always move automatically, even to move off of a river hex. So let's go back and move. Let's go ahead and move these units. I wanted to bring Lion down to Cairo, and Fremont, we will just move Fremont to, I'm going to move them between Jefferson City and St. Louis right now. I'm still not sure what I want to do there. If I want to take those cities yet or not. All right, I think that is it for turn number 1. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you saw me do something wrong, and Ben, I'm talking to you, I hope you're watching this. I was able to correct that initiative mistake I made. There's a lot of things that's scattered through the rule book that you must remember, and there's, you know, that's one of the things I forgot. First time I'm playing this game all the way through though, so it's going to happen more than just this one time. So already we're a little ahistorical. We had the first Battle of Manassas went for the Union actually, which was very interesting. And you know, we had no leader deaths in that, which was good. Other than that, I don't think we're too far off the rails. I don't know. Like I said, we are going to get there though, because this game is meant to do just that, and that's the kind of game I like. I mean, in theory, I guess you could actually have the same sort of outcome for the Civil War that we had here in our world, and we know, but I like the ability to go off the rails and enter new territory and see new things. And this game certainly lets you do that. And the reason I like that is, like I said, the replayability just goes through the roof when it happens. So leave comments below if you have any strategy you think ought to be happening here. That's a little early. I haven't really started much yet. Just kind of moving some of these units into some sort of place where I can spring from for both sides. Next turn, we will have McClellan will come in, the Army of the Potomac will come in, and the Army of Northern Virginia will come in. We will actually have a logistics phase where we can bring in a lot of these reserves that we have off the board. So we'll start getting some brigades assigned to generals and actually go on the attack more. And as a final note, I am not using the rule that states that the Confederacy has to, well, what was it? It was the Union has to make an attack towards Virginia, and the Confederates had to, well, let's just look it up. Yeah, here we go. So it's the on to Richmond and the Southern manhood. The on to Richmond thing was that every turn it says the U.S. must launch one attack in Virginia towards Richmond or towards another major city in Virginia. I'm not going to do that. I chose not to implement this optional rule. And for the Southern manhood thing, it's the C.S.A. must make at least one attack somewhere on the map. And that, you know, again, I'm not using that rule, so keep that in mind as well. If you have any thoughts on the game, please leave the comments below. And if I made a mistake, let me know. I will attempt to correct it, but probably not. We're probably just going to move along. I don't know that I'll play the entire game. You just saw we went through one, not really a full turn because we didn't go through the logistics phase. So it was about an hour. I think we're about maybe a little over an hour for just one turn. So that'll give you some idea of how long this game could take us to play. I may leave it set up though. I'm working on another table so I can actually have 2 games going at the same time. So maybe this might become the longer term game, and I'll do some other games, couple of turns on the other table, and just keep maybe 2 things going. And if I do that, then I can definitely probably play this one to the end, which I'm inclined to do because I think it's going to be fun. All right, if you enjoy what I do, please like this video, subscribe if you haven't, and there is a Patreon page that's up. And you saw the intro I did. I do have a new camera now, so I do plan on getting that live stream up relatively soon where we can actually talk about some of the things, talk about the channel, where it's headed, where it's not headed, and maybe get some of your feedback. All right. I will see you back here next time. Thank you for watching.